God, you really put me on the spot.
Okay.
Very interesting question. I'd say life is still quite ruthless.
Right.
My mum lived in Spain during the dictatorship. My mum is the reason why I'm so pro-women's rights. My dad was a diplomat. I'm a massive pictures person. I haven't really fit in everywhere. Because of that, I sort of let people walk all over me. Me doing anything to have a friend, it led to me getting really hurt. She hasn't replied. That's fine. I'm so scared of conflict because I didn't want to lose friends. Oh my God, I had the worst time there. When I first saw you, I thought you were dumb because you're white and a girl. So I was like, oh, okay. I was looking through your old podcast guests and I was like, oh my gosh, all of them look so incredible. Very low self-esteem. What do I like about myself? I'm quite bubbly. I'm autistic. Great, cool. I've been looking at it quite positively, I think. She just didn't want me to label myself. I was quite bullied at primary school. And I'm nice to everyone when I first meet. Very fortunate. I've had a really good home life. Basically, I'm quite far left-wing. I'm happy when other people are happy. Years ago, 70 years ago, a black person couldn't be swimming in the same swimming pool as a white person. Have my hope in my family. Gosh, you put me on the spot. That is such a hard question.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my podcast, Coffee's on Me, David Quan, where I strive to give guests legacy-worthy interviews that listeners can enjoy while cooking, commuting, relaxing, or walking their pets. It's a lovely weekend in London, or at least today. Yesterday was very rainy. Typical UK summer, I guess. After my second week of work, while I'm still struggling a bit to climb a very steep learning curve, I'm delighted to grab a coffee with my guest in central London here. I feel very blessed that we're now, approaching the next milestone of 100,000 podcast downloads. Please know that I don't take any of your time, feedback and support for granted, because when I started this passion project at a low point of my time in Cambridge, I was genuinely motivated by 3 founding ideals. Number 1, purpose of giving. Number 2, learning from others. And number 3, sharing of stories. These 3 aspirations still make up the content description for every single episode. Indeed, the opportunities to strive to give my courageous and insightful guests legacy-worthy interviews over coffee, tea, bubble tea, water, juice, or whatever it is, despite my many inadequacies, have been a tremendous privilege that imbues me with gratitude. I know that I will look back and listen back to laugh at how naive I am. But if you have been enjoying the discussions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts, thank you, and please do consider leaving a review and nominating a guest by contacting me via my Linktree, David Quan. Seeing this podcast on people's Spotify Wraps or receiving positive messages about the guests give me tremendous fulfillment. I cannot thank all my wonderful guests enough for their courage and insights. I genuinely maintain the deep conviction that this passion project, if wholly true to those 3 founding motivations about giving, learning and sharing, is a worthwhile pursuit. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce my very talented, bubbly, cultured and cool guest. Emma Dix has just finished her first year studying economics at Girton College, University of Cambridge. And coming back to the UK for university has been the 7th time she has moved countries. And the 11th time she has moved houses. From living in Nigeria, India, Spain, the UK, and most recently the UAE, she's had her fair share of travel as well as the ability to experience many different cultures across the world. Over time, Emma has been able to discover her passion for both mathematics and economic development, something that she has been able to delve deeper into within her degree. Simultaneously, she's had quite a few life lessons when it comes to making friends and sustaining long-lasting relationships, something which therapy to understand her ASD has certainly aided. In her free time, Emma can generally be found in a coffee shop drinking an iced latte, which we are actually drinking now. Having in-depth discussions with friends about any topic under the sun, most recently the cultural significance of the Barbie movie, or preaching her love for Animal Crossing to anyone willing to listen. Emma, delighted to have you here. Welcome to my podcast, Coffee's on Me, David Quan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me. Seriously.
I'm really, really excited. One of the best practices I got for interviewing was that the opening question needs to be something that eases the guest in, that there's familiarity. So I was thinking about what could I ask you at the start, and I think the best question would be, how has the coronavirus pandemic impacted domestic violence in Spain?
Gosh. Well, yeah, I did an EPQ on this at school in year 13, so for anyone listening. But yeah, it's one of my passion projects, so I'm very interested in feminism, very interested in kind of what it's like around the world for a woman to live around the world. So Spain obviously being quite close to my heart. I'm half Spanish, and my mum lived in Spain during the dictatorship there. So the kind of experiences that women suffered there during the dictatorship sort of formulated this question, and I kind of wanted to see like the modern day impacts, the repercussions, and the sort of social transformation that Spain had undergone. So I actually found, I guess it's quite obvious that with the coronavirus, with the nature of the restrictions, people are sort of meant to stay at home. So in that, the domestic violence sort of fosters with more couples. I guess the changes in dynamics, with people being forced essentially to stay together, it also traps women within certain situations. So the lockdowns obviously prevented women who maybe were economically reliant on their partners from actually leaving to, through the losses of jobs. But also it enabled emotional abuse since people were together constantly and basically living on top of each other. But yeah, I have to be honest, I really enjoyed researching that. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's quite interesting how Mum had that almost experience that perhaps a lot of people, or perhaps you never really had. And do you talk to her much about her experiences under that period?
Yeah, actually, well, my mum is the reason why I'm so pro women's rights, I think. Because in her household, she kind of lived through the traditional Spanish household, where it was like, she had an older sister and an older brother. So the older brother kind of received all the treatment, all the gifts, he was able to do all the things that he wanted to do. My mum and her sister were essentially sort of repressed. And she wasn't actually within Spain, so her brother was paid to go through uni, to do what he wanted to do, but her parents wouldn't want to pay for her uni because they were like, no, you're going to get married off, you're an option. But my mum, being the woman she is, she tried to put herself through, and obviously it got too hard, working a full-time job and going to uni at the same time. So she basically worked so hard, to get where she is today. I think because of that, she wants me and my sister to have an easier life, I guess. And yeah, I think honestly because of her, I think she is sort of maybe the person I am today because of that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And have you said thank you to her and the influences that she's had on you? Is it pretty transparent, and she knows very clearly just how much her journey inspires you?
I don't think I do it enough. I think I have, I just haven't really expressed it truly. I think especially being around so many different types of people, being around so many different cultures, I think I truly understand just how much of an influence that parents can have on their kids. I think especially when I lived in Dubai, all my Indian friends, well, not all of my Indian friends, some of them had parents who were well, look, you're going to get an arranged marriage, that sort of thing. And I think that obviously influences certain families more than others. But my friends at the time had less of a drive than I did because they exclusively strived for an arranged marriage. And I completely understand that that's a cultural thing. And, I'm not from that culture, but I think the reason why I'm so focused on career and on my degree is because of the influence that my mum has had.
Awesome. And being so pro women's rights, Barbie world is your ideal?
No. I think that's a bit extreme. No, I have to be honest. I'm very pro equality. Very pro equality. To an extent, I think definitely very pro equality. Yeah.
So having lived in, all these different countries, do you feel like any particular place or culture is closer to equality or not closer, or is it easily measurable through a hierarchy, or is there very complex dimensions that comes to it?
I just think the cultures are so different. I think for that you can't really compare them. I've certainly, I don't fully understand. I can't properly immerse myself in the cultures when I'm not part of that group necessarily. So obviously I can observe them, but I only have my own opinion of it. I feel like other people have different opinions about their culture, especially if they live through it their entire lives. I was kind of just a transient factor in different cultures. And I think when it comes to equality, I think different cultures have different aspects of it. And I think no culture's truly reached equality. I think that's pretty obvious. I think when you still have elements such as unconscious bias against certain groups of people, I don't think obviously these conversations with sexism and racism and homophobia aren't actually being had in person, but they're still living at the backs of people's heads. And I think when that's still around, I don't think anything's truly equal. So
very interesting. Could you just maybe just give a brief overview of you've lived in 5 countries as a child, but at what age did you stay at which country, just so I have more of a conceptual understanding, a structure of your life?
Yeah, of course. Well, this is going to be quite long. Anyway, so it kind of starts with me being born in Spain, living in Spain for a few months, and then I moved to Nigeria until I was 3. But we went back to Spain in that meantime for my sister to be born and then for me to go to nursery there for a while. So after that happened, I came back to Nigeria, stayed in Nigeria until I was about 3.5. Let's say I then moved to India, lived there for 4 years until I was about 7. Then moved to the UK, lived in the UK for about 6 years. Then moved to the UAE, lived in Dubai for 5 years, and then came back to the UK for uni.
Wow, that's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And when you hear, like, the typical questions that freshly, where are you from? Does it frustrate you that you've been to a number of places, or is that an opportunity for you to just share all of that?
Honestly, I've never looked on it as a frustration. I think for me, actually, one of the funniest experiences was actually coming to Girton for my kind of introductory day before we started. Everyone was asking, where are you from? And people started listing places in the UK. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, we're not on the same wavelength. But I don't know, I really enjoy talking to people about it. And I think people are really curious. I really like it. It's a conversation starter. It gets me talking to like lots of different people. It makes conversation interesting for sure. Yeah.
But out of all those places, is there a place that you feel particularly more connected to, or is it just all a part of you? I guess it is all a part of you, but where are you from,
I think, well, I don't know, I don't really feel home anywhere. I think moving around so much, home is more the people I have around me, necessarily, rather than the place. Yep. I think, obviously, I've lived in the UK and the UAE more recently. Yep. So I think when I think of my identity, I sort of attach it more to those places rather than Nigeria, Spain, India. But I have to say, I think with kind of my ties with the people I know, with the friends I have, family I have, I think I attach more of myself to the UK, I'd say, definitely. Even though nothing really feels like home. But that's not going to change for a while, so... Yeah.
That's very interesting, and, lots of people... I think it's a good thing, obviously, to get exposure in different culture, different places, and understanding kind of the assumptions that we are not aware of when we're just in the same environment. But on the con side, like being a TCK, third culture kid or third culture child, there can also, as you said, that transient feeling of not really feeling like you belong anywhere or having identity struggles. And does that resonate with you? Does that...
I mean, I don't know how you felt coming to Cambridge as an international student. I mean, I'm semi-international, not really international. Yeah. But there was still a cultural difference. Like, even though I hadn't lived in the UK for 5 years, I still, like, there were like, cultural bits that I didn't really understand at the start. And I think that was a sort of barrier. And it was like, if I was experiencing that, what are people from different cultures around the world experiencing, Because I have a British dad. I have a British family. Like, I have all these English connections and I'm still experiencing difficulty. Like, I think actually going through that gave me more sympathy for like other international students. And I think I don't necessarily have issues with my identity because this is the way I've grown up. I mean, obviously, here and there I'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't know where my home is, that sort of thing, I'll have that sort of feeling wash over me. Yeah. But I haven't lived anyone else's lives. So, like, a lot of my friends have lived in the UK their entire life. And, every so often I'll be like, oh, I really wish I could have done that. Yeah. But I was like, it's kind of, that part of me has been and gone. Like, I don't want to dwell on the past. If I've never really had that life, how do I know that would be better than my current situation of moving around all the time, Yeah, that's really interesting. Why did your family move at each stage? Well, my dad was a diplomat. So he was posted to Nigeria, posted to India, and we went back to Spain mainly for me and my sister to be born. But also I think partially because it was like an opportunity to like be around our Spanish family for a bit longer. We then went back to the UK, like stuff happened. But it was initially because my dad was a diplomat, and then he moved to another company which made us move to the UK. But since the company was based in Dubai, he eventually changed jobs within the company, and we got moved to Dubai. So yeah.
And would you ever want to be a diplomat and be sent around the world and gain that exposure? It sounds like pretty cool.
I would love it, I think. The thing is, I have no clear idea of what I want to do. I just kind of see myself travelling. I don't know, like, I'm like...
Solo travel, or with friends, or with family?
Whatever. As long as I'm travelling, you know, I don't know who with, but that's a later problem. But I can definitely, I think with my dad's job now, he travels quite a lot, but he's mainly based in Dubai. So, like, I really like a job where I'm based somewhere but travelling other places. I mean, even like being a diplomat where you're posted temporarily to like other places, I'd also enjoy that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've become more flexible because of it.
Yeah.
I think definitely travelling would be interesting.
I guess as you said, you know, none of us have really lived, you know, other people's lives, and it's hard to live a parallel life, but if you were to hypothesize or to reflect on like the influence that like traveling has had on the way that you view life, like how do you think life, or how your viewpoints have been influenced by the different travels that you've had compared to just staying, say, in Spain or in UK or in Nigeria? Beyond just kind of, I see more things and different perspectives, but does it manifest itself on a concrete day-to-day level, or interactions or habits?
I think, I mean, the fact that I've been able to travel so much, being based around like so many different points of the world, I feel grateful for having kind of actually had that experience. I think like a lot of people, when they actually travel to like, I mean, from here, when they travel to Asia, for example, it's in their 20s, you know, and I was kind of able to do that early on because I was living there, basically. I think, well, obviously having the experience, but I think being able to travel so much did make me realise how fortunate I was as a kid to sort of be able to see like so many different people from so many different walks of life at such a young age. I think is so cool. I'm a really, I don't know, I rely off of other people for like serotonin boosts. I love meeting new people, even though I can be shy at times. I think just being able to meet so many different people at such a young age has sort of really helped with like the constant moving around. It's made me a lot more, I think, a bit more brave when it comes to meeting new people, making new friends and that sort of thing.
So when you move somewhere new, what best practices have you got for making friends? Because I feel like you've had a lot of practice and you almost had to basically assimilate and try to make that new connection.
I think definitely especially coming to uni, what I've realised is like I'm the one who's moving, I'm the one who has to make the effort. So it's like I try, it's difficult though, I try and go out my way, I try and message people, I try and talk to people.
So you're saying you meet someone new and then you make an effort to then message them the next day and, hey, it was nice to meet you, and do you want to catch up again?
always whenever I meet up with anyone for coffee, like if even like the smallest thing, I'll always send a message like, hey, it was lovely to see you, it'd be really nice to see you again, because I don't know, I think I'm just so used to it. I just still sort of do it, even though like
very diplomatic.
Even with you could say even with like my best friends, I'll still say, you know, I'm so excited to see you today. Like, I can't wait to see you, and I will be excited. It's just something that is so ingrained within me to do. I think I have sort of struggled over time to sort of get to that stage, because I think for a long time I had like the mindset where it's like, you know, if they want to meet up with me, they'll also message me. Like, I won't always have to do that. But I think over time, like my sister and my mum and my dad have definitely helped me realise, you know, I have to make the effort sometimes, you know. Especially like since I'm the one moving around, I think especially with my friends from my school in the UK, I still talk to a lot of them. I mean,
oh wow, so you keep in contact.
One of them is at Cambridge. I see her all the time, so it's keeping in contact with them like every so often. It's like, you know, if you send them a message out of the blue, that sort of thing, you know, having a message out of the blue for me is lovely as well. Like, when I kind of approach things, I always think about what I'd like back from me. And it's like, if I had a message out of the blue from someone I really cared about, I'd be like, oh, that's lovely, that's amazing, you know. I'd really appreciate that. So I I think I've started recently going into how I approach friendship in that way. Basically, doing what I'd want back, essentially. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's very thoughtful and empathetic of you. And do you feel like, you know, I really resonate with, like, sometimes it's just the kind of courage to just reach out because you don't really have much to lose, right? Because you reach out and actually most people just are greatly appreciate they appreciate you taking the effort to reach out. But when you say haven't seen a school friend for a number of years, obviously your path is diverted and changed. When you reach out to them, is it different to reaching out to, say, uni friends now where you're just on a short vacation? And how do you kind of balance the two of, we haven't talked for a while, so like, do you say, for example, that let's have a proper catch up, or let's have a call where you tell me everything about it? Like, how do you handle the different types of maintenance, if that makes sense?
I'm the sort of person that I feel like I need face-to-face contact. So I think if I can, I will always meet up for a coffee.
Okay.
So
not really like phone calls or voice notes.
I'm more of a FaceTime, in-person kind of person. I like seeing people.
Okay.
I like talking to an actual person on the other side.
But like different countries, you can't always
have
coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, in that case, I definitely FaceTime people. I mean, I think I've sort of left Dubai in the past recently. So like, there are people I think I'll reach out to eventually. I think at the moment I'm focusing on my friends in the UK, like, since I'm able to see them more. And I think with the kind of messaging friends out of the blue, I think I'm able to quite deal with it quite easily. Like, I think I actually messaged someone from Dubai a while ago. She hasn't replied. That's fine.
Nothing personal.
No, I don't take it personally, because it's like, my mindset is I'm transient. I'm kind of moving around everywhere. I'm able to talk to so many different people. I'm grateful for the people I'm friends with already.
You're not defined by any one person.
Exactly. I think I try not to anyway. When it gets to that stage, it's not good. Because like, you should never ever base all your happiness, all your self-worth on one person. I think. Yeah. I get it, well, I'm trying to get it more for myself, but I get it from lots of different groups of people from different walks of life. And I do
find it quite special, obviously, as you said, you know, I'm an international student as well, and we probably resonate a little bit on that kind of transient nature and moving around. I do find it's quite special when you reach back out to people who have really shaped you, because when you then speak to them, you instantly remember what you were like, because our perceptions of ourselves are part of what we think others see us. And we're very good at knowing, you know, what kind of interactions we have had with other people. So everyone kind of sees a bit of us, only we have had more of a whole picture. So then when I reach out to, say, primary school friends or middle school friends, you instantly remember all the stupid things that we used to do. And it's very different to perhaps how I believe my uni friends see me. And I was wondering, when you reach back out to old friends who know a part of you that your current friends perhaps don't understand, how does it make you feel about the progressions you've made in life and the changes that has happened?
I think reaching out to other friends, like, if it's by message, but I also like, I think looking through old pictures sort of makes me relive all the old memories. So recently, well, obviously, like, our container came from my family moving back to the UK.
Yeah.
So I was able to look through all the albums and kind of reminisce of like all my different lives around the world. And I think being able to look through pictures, being able to talk to people.
Pictures does say 1,000 words for you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a massive pictures person. I have an album for everything. I'm someone who just always has their phone on them for the use of taking pictures of people. Because it's like, when I'm kind of in bed, I don't know, if I'm watching something, I might be scrolling through like old pictures, reliving stuff. If I'm just like doing nothing, basically. I don't know, I think it's because my mum takes so many pictures. Her dad was a photographer, so I think it kind of all unconsciously might stem from that.
Is there a disadvantage of, you know, sometimes you actually ironically miss the moment because all you're thinking is taking a picture for later?
I'm quite lucky that I have like quite a few friends who have the same mindset. So it's like one of us is always taking a picture. And I never really am missing the moment, because I will take a moment to be in the moment rather than focusing on the picture.
Yeah.
Like, the moment comes first, pictures come second in my point of view. But I don't know what it is, just looking through pictures. When
was the last time you looked at some photos and maybe felt a bit of nostalgia in a either happy or sad way?
Honestly, the other day when I was looking through albums, it was all from, I think it must have been year 9, year 10 at school, from like...
What's changed?
So
if
much.
I spoke to
so
Emma,
much.
who's in year 9, would it be a very different person? Would I get a different perception?
Well, Emma in year 9 wants to do maths at Cambridge, so you could say quite a bit has changed. I think as a person I've definitely evolved. I think back then I think when it came to friendships I had such a different view with I think with the nature of moving around so much. I think especially when I came to the UK at my primary school, like everyone had lived there their entire lives. They all had their like friendship groups going into year 3, which obviously like I never understood. So I guess I didn't really fit in anywhere, and I think it was the desperation of fitting in anywhere.
You wanted to fit in
so badly. I think because of that I sort of let people walk all over me, because it was because of me doing anything to have a friend. I'd sort of let people do what they wanted, and I wouldn't set boundaries, and that was obviously my fault by not expressing what I need to other people. But I think with that happening, I think it led to me getting really hurt. And I think as a person I've changed so much. I think with my family, with like, therapy, with other people I've lent on in the past, I think I've learned that communication is definitely key. Like I've learned to like always communicate. Not that I always do it still. It's a work in progress, but it's something that is at the forefront of my mind.
I guess this desire to belong, to feel included, to be liked is just such a natural, evolutionary instinct that we all need to have. So at that point then, when you were trying to fit in, as you said, people walking all over you, what does that actually mean? Like, as in, were you just like people pleasing? Were you just agreeing on everything people say?
Yeah, it was
not being
like
confrontational at all. It
was like I had no opinion of my own. It was weird. I think it was so deeply rooted in the desperation to like have like a long-term friendship that I sort of went about things the like completely wrong way, where I'd sort of agree with people on the basis of not having conflict, because I was so scared of conflict because I didn't want to lose friends and that sort of thing, and it all kind of manifested itself, and it was sort of a vicious circle when you're in it.
School?
Mixed gender school.
Yep.
It was all sort of a vicious circle which I could never really get out of until, I think there was one time where I probably sat down, one of the numerous times I sat down with my family and we kind of had a conversation about these things, and it sort of, I think something clicked in my head, and I was like, I actually have to tell people what I want. I'm a person as well. I don't exist to please other people, and it's not other people's fault because I haven't told them what I wanted from a friendship, so like obviously I've been hurt in the process, but it's also been my fault, like, and I admit to that now, so I go about life nowadays trying to change that completely and sort of tell people what I want. And
it's very tricky, and I think from all the kind of volunteering in schools that I've done, working with kids that are like basketball coaching, I think stage 1 seems to always be, well, it's other people's fault. It's all their fault. The world is unfair.
Oh yeah, I've been past that stage.
and then stage 2 is like, no, actually, it's all my fault. I am flawed. I am problematic, and I didn't communicate, and then you blame it all on yourself. But I think what I found helpful and what I've seen helpful in other people, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is maybe it's not like necessarily any one particular's fault. It's more like at that time, in that particular context, in that moment, under those particular circumstances, the relationship didn't work out. So it was actually just the dynamics and the nature, rather than you're an objectively bad person or a good person, because we're all growing, we're all developing. I'm sure lots of the kids don't actually mean to hurt other people, but they do it because they haven't yet emotionally, spiritually, or whatever developed. And I was wondering, how do you now see the inevitable problems that we all have in friendships, relationships, and just interpersonal dynamics, as we're all such complex beings?
I do believe in the whole right person, wrong time, with friendships anyway. I think with me, I've changed so much over the years, where it's like, some of the friends that I might have had in the past, I might have been very compatible with at that time, but I've changed, we've diverged so much, where it's like, nowadays, there's nothing we can talk about because our lives are completely different. And, while that might be a good thing for some people, I think we might be so different that we genuinely cannot have a conversation. But then other times I feel like, especially in my past with some of the friends that I've made, I think, you know, there have been mistakes on both sides. And I'm definitely one to own up to my mistakes in that, because, you know, I didn't know how things worked yet, I think.
Do you mind sharing an example of what a mistake might be?
Yeah, I think, genuinely, I think year 9, year 10 was kind of, I had some really good friends, and I think I didn't really know how to approach friendship at this point, so I didn't really tell them about, like, certain things. And, you know, it kind of got to the point where everyone, like, teases people. And I think it might have gone past that teasing barrier, and I think it really affected me mentally. So I was like, I didn't really tell them because I didn't want to start anything. But I think bottling it up so much actually negatively affected our friendship to the point we had, like, a falling out. And, you know, I never really spoke to them much again. And I think I kind of look upon it with regret. But, like, I think actually, genuinely, the other day while I was scrolling through the albums, I was like, you know, it's not about the long-term connections. It's about, like, the people you meet along the way and, like, the fun you have with them. I was like, you know, I had so much fun with them in year 9, year 10. But I'm happy with leaving that in the past.
Yeah.
Like, we had good times. I don't need to reach out to those people again. Yeah. And I think moving around so much has kind of helped me with that, because I've met so many different people. Like, it sounds really silly, but I think with the fact that it's been so easy for me to meet new people, I still value connections, but I also value I have value in basically knowing when it's time to not see someone again.
Yeah. I
think I know when to say...
It's happened, accepting that it's happened, but
exactly,
nothing needs to be permanent or...
Exactly, yeah. I'm trying to go into life with that mindset, because it means that I stay less attached to other people and having more confidence in myself and knowing what I want, knowing what I should get out of things and that sort of thing.
That's really interesting. And it's also interesting how I think our brains and our psychology are very biased. Like, I'm thinking of, like, the peak end rule, where how we value and experiences seems to often be, like, the average between the peak, the best moments, and the end.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't have the mind to really take a, say, average approach of, you know, oh, actually, you know, 99 occasions we've had fun, but, you know, it ended very badly. Then we look back and go, oh, that was horrible.
Exactly, yeah. No,
but actually, you know, most times...
I had this exact view when I was genuinely, again, when I was looking through the pictures in the album, I came out of my secondary school in Dubai being like, oh my God, you know, I had the worst time there. It was sort of overshadowed. But genuinely, like, I was looking through the picture and I was like, oh, I was really happy there. I was really happy here. Like, I had so many happy moments, but it was sort of all overshadowed by the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do realise that it's so weird. It's like, we only remember the good bits. We only remember the bad bits. We don't remember all the other bits, just the average bits. I don't know, like...
But surely they matter, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's so important. I think I'm trying to go into life with a bit more of a positive outlook.
I think also the irony is, like, when you're hurt so bad, it's also because there was that trust and good times that have built up and enabled that hurt. Because when a stranger just does bad things to you, you don't really feel... But it's almost like what I'm trying to say, like, the times when we're hurt really bad are also the times... are also when it's an indication that there has been a lot of good times and lots of good things that have built up. Their expectations have ballooned, perhaps too much, but there's still been good things that have led up to that moment. And I wonder, can we or should we try and be more so-called objective with the whole journey?
I'm such an emotional person, so being objective is out of the question. The moments in which you're truly hurt, it's because you truly value that person, and, like, whether they tried to hurt you or not, they've hurt you. I think, but even then, like, the positive bits, when you feel truly the happiest, it's because of those people you value and because they've gone, like, above and beyond to make you happy. I don't think I can ever look at things objectively because of that, because it's like, we're looking at people here, and I think it's the emotions that you derive from being around certain people. I don't think there's anything objective about that. For me, it's purely emotional. Like, around my best friends, I'm at my happiest. And, you know, while we might have our low points, we always kind of get to the bottom of it. And it's that sort of makes me happy.
That's interesting. I also found it interesting when you say when you were people pleasing, you were just agreeing to everything, you didn't have an opinion of your own, and you almost weren't a separate person or separate entity.
Yeah.
So, but obviously, if we look at what you're doing now, you know, studying economics at Cambridge, having the various passions that you have and wanting to make an impact, you clearly have quite an independent mind and you really want to take charge. So did you feel like you were perhaps almost like underrated or underestimated in school, where other people perhaps didn't really see your potential?
I think definitely at points. I think I've kind of gone through life being underestimated.
What does that mean, underestimated?
I don't know. I like my first memory of like sort of like that umbrella term was coming to the UK and actually going to my primary school to visit it for the first time. And my year 3 teacher asked, since I'd lived in India, she asked, "Have you ever been to school before?" So I think from then on it was like people sort of had different expectations of me, maybe because of my background. Like I remember going to my school in Dubai for the first time, and I'm someone who's always loved doing like maths things. I've done like tons of maths competitions, like any one that I could do, I'd do. As soon as I got to my school in Dubai, so we had the UKMT, I remember, and I think, you know, we all did that, whatever. I think I can't remember exactly where I was, but I think I did pretty well in it. And genuinely, I had someone come up to me and go, you know, when I first saw you, I thought you were dumb because you're white and a girl.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, okay. So I think, I don't know, I can't pin it on people that like they're purposefully underestimating me, you know, not valuing me. I think it's just
that feeling of,
I don't know, it's not a bad feeling. I think for me I feel really happy because I always exceed. Yeah, I always exceed what people expect of me. And I think in year 13 I had this like economics teacher who really hated me, and if my friends are listening, they're really gonna get so annoyed at me for mentioning this because I talk about it all the time. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, he was just pretty awful to me, wouldn't ever value my achievements. But I think having someone who thinks about you that much
you're living rent free.
Yeah, basically, pretty much
in their head.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't know, it was a real motivation for me to do better, because I knew that it was like, first of all, you know, I was doing what I wanted to do, and second of all, I was making that person unhappy. I don't know, I thrive on that sort of thing. And I think being underestimated, I think, is always a good thing. I think it's like when people realise what you can truly do, they're like they're taken aback, and then they're like, oh wow, okay, like, you know, and then from then on, you know, they properly value you.
They do say like happiness is like reality minus expectations. So if you want to maximize happiness, then you just keep your expectations very low.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the flip side, getting into a university like Cambridge, people probably have very high expectation of you, and they perhaps I find at least that I often think I'm incredibly like overestimated, where other people are always like, oh, the world's going to be your oyster, you can do anything you want, but it doesn't feel that way internally. And I don't think reality is that simple. And have you ever had a turning point where, well, actually now you're overestimated, and while it might feel good to be acknowledged or respected, but it also gives you more pressure, perhaps it leads to complacency, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think with like, I have been underestimated in the past, but there have also been people that have like very much overestimated me. I remember the whole like at my school applying to Cambridge was made like such a big thing, because like Oxbridge was like put on a pedestal at like my secondary school, and I think with that mindset everyone sort of knew who was applying, what they were applying for. I think
even
everyone would
applying
always
is,
everyone would come up to me and go like not everyone would come up, like, you know, I'd have one or two people, like if I'd talk to them about it, they'd be like, oh, but you're obviously gonna get in, and that sort of thing. I was like, okay, please
puts
don't
a lot
say
of pressure.
that.
So
yeah, exactly.
You get in, it's like, oh, of course, but if you don't get in,
if you don't get in, yeah, exactly. I think I'd say I had the right balance of underestimation and overestimation, where it's like, I've never been complacent. I've always done the amount of work that I've kind of needed to. I've never really had the experience of complacency. And I think that's also rooted in the fact that with the parents I have, they've been like super like education focused. But I think I always feel like people overestimate me, because I think it's sort of rooted in self-esteem to an extent. And I think especially coming to Cambridge, seeing people do such amazing things, like I was looking through your old podcast guests, and I was like, oh my gosh, all of them look like so incredible, you know. And I think like other people's achievements don't diminish your own. And I think I'm still struggling with that, because I'll look at other people and be like, oh, people have their lives together. I don't. I have nothing going on for me.
To.
Exactly, they appear to. It's like you don't know what things are like behind closed doors. Like, you don't know what's going on. And I'm in a stage where I'm really happy with where I am. I think no one's really overestimating me. No one's really underestimating me. I'm kind of in that balance, I think.
Equilibrium. Ceteris paribus.
Oh, I'd like to think so. Yeah, definitely ceteris paribus. Yeah. I'd like to hope I'm in an equilibrium, yeah.
Well, that's really cool. And you mentioned, obviously, earlier that therapy has been quite helpful. Therapy is often can be a sensitive, I guess, topic, you know.
Yeah.
How do you... I guess it seems like you've had a very positive experience and you found it very valuable. For anyone who's listening who might be contemplating therapy, do you maybe just want to give some context of how you got into it? Did other people suggest you? Was it difficult, and how has it helped you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so I think the main reason why I got into it was at the start of year 13, I was feeling really down. I was very stressed out, undiagnosed, like ASD. Obviously, it sort of manifested itself in the form of me being overwhelmed. And being constantly overwhelmed was like kind of a warning sign. And like I'd talk to my mum all the time about it. And I think I'm very lucky in the sense that I've always had like parents who are very open with mental health, very open with that sort of thing. So my mum recently finished her psychology degree, actually. And so talking to her made me realise...
She's done everything.
She says really high standards. I don't know what to do. But I think really having that talk with her made me realise, I think it was partly her but also partly me that was like, I need to go and get a psychologist. I can't live like this. I think, and it was like realising that not everyone had the same feeling of anxiety that I did back then.
So you realised that you were going through a trough at that point, and you realised that you could get better, and you had that hope that with the right strategies you could, with the right support.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for people like who might not have parents who are like as open, I still like it's really difficult, and I've just been so lucky with the family that I have. Like I think, you know, they're so encouraging of me always like looking out for myself and like self-improvement and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's what made me go into it.
Also, people say like with therapy, it's not always so much about them necessarily rationally solving your issue, but just having that open, non-judgmental space where you get to share and get that reassurance that what you're feeling is normal and it's fair that you're feeling that way. And I was wondering, did you find that as well to be very beneficial, just to vocalise some of your thoughts and to realise that you're not weird? It's just...
I think actually going into it, I wasn't used to, like, because obviously the way it worked, it was 1 hour every week I'd sit down and I'd talk to my therapist. I wasn't used to talking so much about my emotions because I'd bottled it up for so long that at the start it was so weird and I felt really uncomfortable doing it, and I wouldn't want to do the sessions because I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so awkward. And like talking about things in the past obviously regurgitates emotions, so I'd get really emotional and I'd really be feeling things. But I think further down the line, like the more sessions I did, the more I realised it was actually working so well. Actually talking about things, my therapist would give me like strategies on how I could like manage emotions, manage my anxiety, manage certain things, and like sort of rewiring the way that I'd approach things necessarily, like actually being able to consciously work upon that rather than only talking about my emotions. It was, I thought the way I was just so lucky with my therapist, I think.
Obviously everyone's predicaments are slightly different, and we all have different predispositions in the way that we consider and conceptualize things. But do you feel like out of those strategies, are there any that are relatively transferable to most people that we should all do more of?
Gosh. I think for me it was like a lot of my sessions were based on self-esteem. So I, especially in the past, I suffered with very low self-esteem, just kind of looking around me, I'd sort of feel less than other people. And I think we did a really good exercise where it was like writing things that we liked about ourselves, like genuinely consciously making a list and writing and explaining why we like those things. And I think going through, like, actually writing things down is just so useful. And, like,
strength-based.
I have to admit, I don't do it enough nowadays. I did it a lot in the past when I was actually, like, when I was struggling more with it. But I think being able to write things down and being able to consciously think about certain things, like, regardless of which situation, if, you know, if you have anxiety, thinking about things that calm you down, but also thinking about your triggers, like, being able to properly list those things, getting an idea of the certain situations you can put yourself in and how they affect you really gives you a better idea of what you're going through, I think.
What do you like about yourself?
What do I like about myself? I mean, starting with, I guess, personality-wise, I feel like I'm quite bubbly. I like how happy I can be. I don't know, I feel like I've talked to other people about this, and I like asking people what they think of me, because, like, I like seeing what I portray to other people. I think the main takeaway I get is that I get very excited. I get very emotional about certain things. And I think I like how much I show that to other people. I like that other people can see how much I value them in that aspect. So, like, personality-wise, I'd say I like that about myself. I guess obviously you got, like, physically, whatever, like, eyes. I like my eyes, I like my eyebrows, that sort of thing. And, you know, I like most things. I like my freckles and things. But I think, yeah, properly being able to write a list and actually being able to talk to someone else about it. Like,
what else do you like about yourself?
What else? Keep going. Oh, God. People are going to get bored. I mean, I like my hair a lot. I like my style. I don't know, I think I like my passion for other people, I'd say. I love people. Like, I don't know what it is. And I really like that about myself. I just really value people. I don't know why I do it. I think it's just innate. But, yeah.
That's wonderful. That's really nice. And I think my school was very unique because we were one of the pioneering schools for positive education, which is based on positive psychology, which is the kind of new branch that has opened up in the past few decades by the pioneering psychologist Martin Seligman, who used to be the president of the American Psychology Association. The basic premise, and this is a dumbed down version, is that traditional psychology is often focused on how do we pull someone from mental illness into a state of so-called normality. But actually there should be another state that is even better than the normal life that we're living, called a state of flourishing, where you have he used the PERMA model, an acronym PRMA, positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning and accomplishment. When you're in that flourishing state, you have all of these things in abundance. And one of his premise is that so much of society has a negativity bias of over prioritizing what you're bad at and trying to improve on what you're bad at. But actually, if we all just leverage and lean into our strength, that actually makes us happier. So for you, for example, if you're really passionate about people and you love people, then taking a very conscious effort to schedule in things in the week where you get to help other people and you get to volunteer and to serve, then that will boost your well-being so much more. And I thought that was just really interesting of what you shared about really training our mind to be positively focused and not just our natural evolution instincts of looking out for dangers, which is very anxiety driven.
Yeah, like, I have to say, I'm still not perfect. I still have so many issues with anxiety and things. But I think it's the positive reinforcement of actually working towards having such a positive mindset. I think being able to schedule in coffees with people that I truly value, being able to see people, being able to, even FaceTime people if I can't be bothered to, drive however long. I mean, I can't drive, get other people to drive me. I think just being able to consciously work on that really, it really has helped me. I think I went from, such a ball of anxiety at school to, basically flourishing at uni because of the people I was surrounded by, because of, the inside of my head, and because of my family. I think that combination of, I don't know, connections and internal thoughts really helped me. Yeah. That's
wonderful. And you were mentioning how ASD was undiagnosed. When did you get it diagnosed?
It was December 2021. It was at mid-year 13, so it was quite late. And I think the reason for that is because it goes undiagnosed quite a while for girls. So it's within psychology, a lot of the symptoms for ASD are mainly focused on boys and the way they present. And I think it manifests itself so differently within girls. But I was lucky enough that I kind of had a mum who sort of knew anyway, and she told me quite early on, I think you have this. I don't want to define you by it. So if you do start like wanting to go to a psychologist, if you do want to get a diagnosis, feel free to. But like she told me about it. She told me like sort of things that I could do. She just didn't want me to label myself by it. So
implicit in that is that there's a kind of connotation with it or other perception.
Not that, it's that I feel like, I don't know, I've sort of had this experience when I was first diagnosed. I'd sort of, and like, you know, even now I'll still sometimes do it. I'll pin things to it when in reality it might just be me. Like, I'm naturally like quite anxious. And why that is rooted in my ASD, it's also because, you know, I internally in my head might overthink things. And that's not rooted in my ASD. That's just rooted in my thought process. So I think it's the conscious effort to like, yes, I have it, but, and you know what? I'm autistic. Great. Cool. But it's like, I'm not going to kind of work myself up over it. You know, I think nowadays there are such negative connotations around it. I'm just kind of trying to move away from that. I've been looking at it quite positively. I think because of it, I'm able to be so emotional. Because of it, I value connections so much. And I think just trying to distance myself from the negative aspects of it has been quite a big part of...
Do you feel like schools or, you know, youth communities can do a better job of, you know, making people appreciate that, you know, that those negative connotations are not always true and it doesn't define someone? Like, do you feel like we can do more as a society to help people?
I think there's already quite a lot of awareness around it, but I think you can always do more. I think within any kind of field, there's always more that can be done to like make people more aware about it and that sort of thing. I think the main reason why I was so affected by it was because where I lived, it wasn't talked about. Mental health wasn't talked about. You know, at school, it wasn't talked about.
In the UK or UAE?
In the UAE.
Okay.
I think the experiences for people around the world are sort of defined by their surroundings, and I think definitely around the world it needs to be, like, mental health needs to be there needs to be a conversation about it, basically. I think at school it was really neglected to like only like towards like the end stages where it started being included within the curriculum, and I think that's great. I think it's great that they started doing it. I just wish for myself and other people that it could have been done sooner, basically. Especially for people who didn't necessarily have a supportive home life in regards of like speaking out openly about mental health. Yeah.
So when you say like earlier on that like your passions are like on like economic development and equality, part of that I guess includes like the qualitative dimensions of life, you know, with the Human Development Index as an example, trying to quantify these things. An intentionally broad question, but how do you weigh up the difference or complementary potential of the quantitative data points versus the qualitative evidence, if we can even get them?
I think when you think about the experiences of people, I think you can define certain things by the quantitative bits and then other by the qualitative bits. I think even thinking about myself, my life experience is so dominated by the people I surround myself by, but also the opportunities that I have available for me. So I think obviously the opportunities can be quantitative in the sense that, you know, like the amount of universities around you, the higher education around you, like how many people are progressing to secondary education. But then I think the qualitative aspects can't really be quantified. Well, they obviously can't be quantified. That's quite, yeah.
Nice. Economists try to.
Yeah, exactly. Like they can't, I think with models you can approximate it, but you can never truly, you know, quantify it. And I think it is very difficult because it's like, how are you going to consider the influences that friendship and that family has on people? How are you going to consider the influence
positive
of
externalities?
Yeah, exactly. The influence of religion and like, you know, I think there are things we can do. There are so many modelling aspects, but I think, you know, I'm kind of the school in economics where it's like models just don't capture the wider aspect. And I think putting connections down as a number is just so difficult. And like, how do you justify it and that sort of thing?
So has the neoliberalisation in the past several decades been good, whatever that means?
I think for certain things, definitely. I think for others, not so much. I don't know. I think especially at Cambridge, yeah, no worries. I think the course is very based. Well, it's very like modelling based, and I think I'm lucky enough in my second year to take a module that kind of goes beyond that necessarily and kind of questions the application of models and how, and like where we can actually use models, where, how effective are they in reality. And I think modelling is great, we kind of have to. We have to. I think when we look at like the economic state of the world, creating models is the closest we can get to like properly approximating things. But I think when we consider like social experiences, life experiences, I don't know, I have the mindset where, that can be modelled, but you can't truly get the emotional side modelled. I think you can approximate it, but actually capturing the value that someone gets, I think, is very, very difficult. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So where do you see yourself having an impact in terms of both utilising your so-called modelling or quantitative evidence-based skills that you're getting at Cambridge versus your innate or holistic appreciation of the beauties of life that can't always be measured?
Oh gosh, that is such a hard question. I mean, I think when I think of the future, it's sort of foggy in the sense that I know I want to be able to contribute to something, but what that is kind of open to me at the minute. I could go into public service, I could work for an international organisation. I mean, at some point I could even, work for a hedge fund. I don't know. I don't know. I think my options...
You didn't want to do finance.
The thing is, my viewpoint has changed so much within the last few years. I just don't know how much it's going to change what I'm going to want to do in the future. And I could see myself doing pretty much anything. I could see myself doing research. I could see myself working a desk job. I could see myself travelling. I could see myself volunteering. I think I want to be able to, as long as I can have some form of contribution, regardless of how that manifests itself, as long as I can sort of see that other people are enjoying their life as much as I'm enjoying mine, I think that's when I'll truly be happy. Yeah.
So, obviously, as we said earlier, when we talk about like overestimation, underestimation, part of being at a place like Cambridge is that it affords us the privilege of, signalling where when we apply for things, we are more likely, not always, but more likely to be taken more seriously and more likely to be given opportunities and privileges that, other people may not always have. And with that then comes a bit more options, and we know that the paradox of choice states that, sometimes we can be overwhelmed by the options. And as you said, you could see yourself in anything, but ultimately you can only live one life, and you have to make some decisions at some opportunity costs, as I'm sure you would understand as an economist. So what currently, I know you're only heading into second year uni, but say if you're heading into the last year of uni now and you need to pick something to do right after, what would be like the key drivers or priorities that you would weigh up in a first kind of thing after uni?
I've been looking at different opportunities, and I think it's more the applicability that they can have to other different jobs. So I think I've been looking at civil service just because working a government job and like working in different sectors will give you like more experience across those sectors. So it's like if you do eventually want to go into the private sector, you have that public sector experience, you have, actually working within that sector. If you want to, for example, if you're working within government, you want to go into consulting, that's quite transferable. You just work on consulting within the government. And I think it's mainly been like looking at jobs which from there I can gain experience, and then when I kind of get an idea of what I actually want to do, I can work from there, having valid job experience and be able to actually go into what I want to do.
How has the social environment at Cambridge, where, as we mentioned earlier, that people come from all sorts of backgrounds and people are ambitious, they really want to make an impact and to do something unique, how have your conversations with friends or others at Cambridge shaped what you want to do in life? And is there a particular conversation where it was just mind-blowing, of like, wow, I didn't even realise that existed, or I didn't realise that you could do that, or that you just really admired someone for their ambitions or their ideas?
I think a lot of my conversation about like careers and futures, so I've got quite a few friends who do econ. I think obviously the resounding answer is investment banking, finance, and I think talking to other people and actually getting an idea of what, I guess, the work culture, the actual job itself, the kind of what you cover in it, I think it made me realise just how much I don't think I'm compatible with that sector. I think the long work hours, I need something where I can relax. I need to be able to, I don't know, I think just basically I kind of understood, I was like, okay, I don't think I'll be able to go into that for a few years because I don't think it's something that I would enjoy. I think probably being able to talk to other people has sort of like narrowed off other things that I don't necessarily want to do. But I think also talking to other people has made me realise that I shouldn't have to lower my ambitions. I think, you know, if I do lower my ambitions, it's in the future if I don't get a job that I want. But like that's a future problem. At the moment, I think I still want to keep my ambitions high because it's like I don't know what I'll actually end up doing. And I think lowering my ambitions for the sake of, you know, minimising the damage I have will, you know, could really negatively affect me in the future. And I don't personally want to do that.
How big of a factor is earning potential?
It's not really a massive factor. I think I haven't really thought about it too much. I don't know. I kind of look at all the jobs that I'm going into, and I think, you know, comparatively, as long as I can have a comfortable life.
What does that mean, comfortable?
Comfortable. I mean, oh gosh,
like
I'm not.
3 million mansion.
No, just like an average house with, you know, my main priority is having a nice group of people around me, and I think having a nice group of people means that I'm really okay with like any sort of living situation. So, because I'm such a people person, it's like as long as I'm surrounded by the right people, I think that makes or breaks something. So I'm quite lucky that I don't need to be too focused on earning potential, I think.
That's basically really cool. In terms of finding the right people, obviously we're still young and we're meeting a diverse breadth of people, but in general, are there characteristics of other people, communities that you have found yourself particularly comfortable with or enjoying hanging around?
I just like people who I guess are expressive. I like people who talk about their emotions a lot, people who talk about their viewpoints a lot. People, I guess when I have conversation with my friends, a lot of it is to see what other people are thinking about a certain thing. And it's like, you know, we probably won't agree, but it's the fact that we're able to have conversations about these really interesting things. I think it's looking for people who want a deeper connection as well.
And what's the most puzzling question that you're considering at the moment that you don't really have an answer but you're thinking about?
A puzzling question? I mean, what I want to do in the future. Genuinely, that is, it's been on my head for a while, and I think I'm trying to put it to rest for a bit. But I think where I see myself in 10 years is definitely something I don't have an answer for. Yeah.
And even if you do have an answer, that probably won't be the answer.
It will change. Definitely. I think seeing people, you know, especially on my course, having the internships, appearing to have their life put together has sort of raised that question within my head. But I think I've realised in the past, I've changed so much as a person, I'm bound to change even more at some point again. So not having a clear idea now is fine, because it's going to change. Yeah. And I've definitely said to my mum and dad, I'm like, it's okay that I don't have my life together, right? They're like, yeah, it's fine. Like, calm down, don't worry, you're fine. But yeah, I think it's just definitely that question is.
How's the interaction with your sister? What's the relationship?
We have quite a funny relationship. I think we're very close. We'll have quite big falling outs, but like right after it's like, oh, have you seen this? It's quite funny, you know. And it's like basically swept under the rug. But no, I love her to pieces. She's hilarious. Yeah, I'd say we're very, very close for siblings anyway.
How are you different?
We're like complete polar opposites. I think that's what makes it amazing. She's so confident. She's like really outgoing. She's really like. We have like completely different academic interests. We have completely different like musical interests. Like I did piano, she always did drums, you know. She did like boxing for a while. Like we're just so different. But I think her being so outgoing has really helped me. Like she's always like, even though she's younger than me, she's so much more mature than I am. Like she's really helped me a lot. Yeah.
And in terms of helping you a lot, is it like, are there things that you haven't told her, but you know that you're really grateful and appreciative, and maybe now's the chance to?
I can't make her head too big, but no, I do really appreciate her. I feel like we have, every so often we'll have like a really long conversation, and you know, she'll be really lovely, quite blunt, but really lovely. I appreciate the bluntness, like I really do. It's necessary. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that, and Hannah, if you're listening, don't judge me for this, please. It's crazy to think that she's so young and she just has such, like, a put-together idea of the world. Like, it's crazy.
So the one similarity between you two is obviously in that same household, the kind of guidance of the parents, or the example of your parents would be relatively similar, of seeing what mum and dad is like on a day-to-day basis, how they see the world, how they treat other people. How would you describe, like, you know, the culture of the household, if that's the right phrase? Like, what kind of stuff do you think mum and dad consciously or unconsciously model or try and instill in the both of you?
I think it's just the whole working hard thing. And I think it's having a good work-life balance, which is the main factor that's been instilled, I'd say. Like, my dad's job, his recent job has been quite intense, where he travels all the time. It's usually just me, my sister and my mum at home. But my mum's always so encouraging of us doing work, but also pursuing our interests. Like, she never wants us to work too hard, which is, I think, the reason why I came to first year, being like, I'm going to enjoy the experience, maybe not work too hard. But I think it's the having the work-life balance, which is so important. And being able to do what we want to do is another main thing. Like, not feeling the need to do something because we think it will please them, like that sort of thing. They've always been very focused on us being able to do what we want to do, because they didn't necessarily get to do what they wanted to do when they were younger. So it was being able to pass that opportunity on to us and sort of make sacrifices for us to be able to do what we wanted to do.
Was there any non-negotiables for them? In terms of treating other people nicely, or if you say we're called in by the head teacher for bullying someone else, you know, is that a problem? Or?
I mean, they never really had
Not
to deal with that. I think it was always I don't know, they always just instilled, like, be nice, and I think they tried to instill know your worth. I mean, for me, it's still a work in progress. For my sister, it's definitely worked. She's awesome. She's awesome. Anyway, I think it's just basically knowing our own boundaries, knowing ourselves, and then treating people accordingly. I think some people who are like, you can't expect to be nice to everyone, I think. And, like, I think that's, I sort of look at it where it's like in the past that I was quite bullied at primary school, and it's like if I'd have gone back on it, I'd have been a bit meaner back. I'd have tried to stand up for myself, because, like, you can't be nice to everyone, because then people are going to expect that of you and be able to take advantage of that. I think you have to choose carefully who you're nice to, I think. And, like, I'm nice to everyone when I first meet them, but it's like when I see that someone's, you know, if someone's making fun of me, I'm not going to be nice. I'll just be like, okay, fine, like, move on. I just won't talk to them again.
Oftentimes the bully are actually the ones who are insecure and are being bullied. So I understand as adults, it can be more perhaps justifiable to just cut them off completely. But for, say, primary school children where everyone is learning, now that you're a bit older, how do you think we can support kids who are clearly perhaps struggling because they are trying to find their identity and worth in putting other people down?
I think a massive thing is, like, a lot of my bullies, I think, necessarily didn't have a very stable home life. So I think it's trying to provide a supportive environment at school. Like, I think being older and kind of looking back on the situation, I sort of realised their family positions. And I understand why things happen. I understand why, you know, they decided to do that, because it was the only situation in which they could have power over someone else, because they never, at home, their home life wasn't stable. I think being able to provide a supportive environment at school is the main thing. Having, you know, counselling for students who need it. I think promoting a sort of really friendly environment that isn't cliquey. I think making sure that everyone is able to talk to everyone without feeling judged. I feel like that's super, super important.
Which raises the economic question of where is the burden of responsibility? Like, is it, you know, often we see now that teachers, for example, are increasingly needing to not only be a teacher but a therapist, a psychologist, a support.
Yeah.
Like, from your intellectual and academic studies on, say, the role of governments, for example, like universal basic income, you know, the premise is that if we provide people the basic living wage, and then they can then make decisions more on their own agency rather than the structure. How do you feel like your academic studies and your personal experiences have guided your worldview in terms of economics or politics?
Oh gosh. I think it's definitely been with my parents. I think being surrounded by my parents who are so open-minded, I think, and moving so much, making me so open-minded. I think I've been able to see, like, people's situations and sort of understand why maybe, you know, people weren't able to reach their full potential and how that was so restricted by their economic background. I think with my economic and political views, which I won't go into because that is a very long story, I think it's really been shaped by just seeing others around me. And I think in primary school, you know, seeing the kids around me, and I really, looking back on it, I feel really bad because I've been very fortunate. I've had a really good home life. I've never had to worry about food on the table. I've never had to worry about having a roof over my head because that's, like, you know, spoken for. But I think seeing how restricted other people were by economic conditions, by, like, their home life, I think that's really shaped my views today. I think the lack of opportunity for all, basically, the lack of equality of opportunity, I think has really shaped it.
So what's the short version of your economic
The short version, I'm quite far left wing. Not super far, but I'd say, like, more further than the average economic student.
Not a Tory supporter?
No. Especially not nowadays. Especially not nowadays. Yeah. Oh, gosh. I definitely don't judge people for political affiliations, though. That's something I've gone into life with. Yeah.
Are you also disappointed by the Labour Party now, then?
I think I'm disappointed by how far they've strayed from their purpose. I think with the Conservatives, it's like it's the act of conservation. It's the act of tradition. I think traditional values, you know, there isn't necessarily a wing they have to fit in, so they're able to be more transient. They're able to cater more to whoever they want to cater for. But Labour itself has been founded on the rights of the working class, and I think having figures like being vocally against, like, workers' strikes is just such a, you know, a U-turn from how the party was founded, which I find quite disappointing. But
have you always been relatively left-wing, even though perhaps as a kid you perhaps didn't understand the terminology? But
I don't really know. I think probably when I was younger I just had no clue about politics.
Yeah.
I think I probably just said what my parents said, which, you know, every kid did.
Yeah.
And I think having online exposure at quite a young age, having the opportunity to, like, watch things online, seeing things, but also experience things in real life, I think that like, sort of shaped it.
Obviously this recording is a snapshot of now.
Yeah.
When we re-listen back in 30, 40 years, would you surprise if you're no longer left-wing and more of a Tory supporter? Would it surprise you?
Yeah, I think actually seeing the people around me, like, grow up, I think people do become, well, from the people I know, from the adults that I know, I think it's a general trend that people become more right-wing as they get older, with, like, having more money like, maybe, you know, kind of the sort of lifestyle you want.
I just recall one of the previous podcast guests, he said something really interesting. He was like, if you're not, like, socialist by 16, you have no heart. But if you're still a socialist at, like, 45, then you have no brain.
I'd say that's quite interesting. I don't know. The thing is, politics is such a unique experience. I think there's no system that's more, I guess, valid, because politics is such an individualistic experience.
On that positionality of where you are.
Exactly, because it's something, you know,
so
people have to look out for themselves within politics, which is why I'm so accepting of other people's opinions, because, you know, the main thing is it's your voice. You know, it's you're the one who's being affected at the end of the day, so you should look out for yourself. If being in a socialist world benefits you, regardless of your age, I don't think that's stupid. I think you should vote for what you believe in. But if you're, you know, if you're a capitalist at heart and that benefits you because, you know, making a fat wage and whatever, and you know, you want to keep that, well, fine, you know, I also understand that, because, you know, I also get that mindset where, you know, you're working hard, you deserve what you get paid. But I'm the kind of person where it's like, I'm happy when people around me are happy. And I think a system where I'm contributing quite a decent chunk of my income and taxes, so that there's a system around there, youth centres, there's the NHS, there's, like, a good education system. I'm very okay with making that sacrifice, because I know that people around me will be happy. And that probably sounds really, like, silly, and people are like, oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I think I'm just the kind of person where it's like, I'm happy when other people are happy. That just makes me happy. So.
We need more Emmas.
I don't know. I feel like
it
might be a silly outlook, and maybe I'll look back in a few years and be like, oh, what are you saying? That's you're talking out your arse there. But I don't know. That's how I feel at the moment. I think with the world being such a big place, being such an interesting place with so many different people, I think it's great to have so many different people. I'm kind of the mindset where it's like, it makes for good conversation. Like, I love talking to people about these things because everyone has such different viewpoints because everyone's affected so differently.
What are your general thoughts on, like, categorizations in academia or, you know, like in economics, like, say, developed countries, developing countries, emerging markets? Like, are these helpful categorizations, like global north, global south, or do you think they perpetuate kind of a colonial bias and coloniality and exploitation? I'm just asking that because you've also had on-the-ground experience in places like Nigeria, which isn't very understood for the general person who's grew up in America or Australia or the UK.
I think, obviously, I understand why they're implemented. It's like, it's a source of identifying countries, you know, being able to group them. But I think it definitely reinforces the sort of bias, legacies that they've had, that bias, because it's like, why are these countries developing? They had the raw materials, they had the natural resources, you know, they had political systems at one point, but this was sort of overrun. And I think it's like compartmentalizing countries and like grouping them, I think, could also be seen as like discouraging for people who might live in these countries. It's like, oh, you know, I'm not in the West. Exactly. The idea of the notion of a third world country, we're all in the same world. I think it's like you're just reducing down a country. I think if you live in a country which is considered as third world, which is like, I think in itself it's such an outdated phrase. I think you can feel really discouraged when you feel like, oh, you know, Western countries and that sort of thing. But I think on the flip side, it's important to kind of distinguish the opportunities that there are around the world, because I think, unfortunately, in the developed countries is where the opportunity to, you know, have the better quality livelihood is. Like, if you look at the kind of HDI and stuff, when you look at all, like, the general consensus is that developed countries generally are at the top, developing countries as categorised are generally at the bottom, which is really sad, I think. Obviously, because it's like, I believe in a world where everyone should be equal, everyone should have, like, equal opportunity and that sort of thing. But it's like, with the actual categories, it's like, it can reinforce psychological things, but it's also sort of necessary. Are we, in general,
making more progress towards equality? Because on the one hand, you know, say with the civil rights movement, feminist movements, that there has, at least on the surface, you know, as Barbie would show, that there are changes that have been made in political rights, for example, but with neoliberalism we can also see the wealth inequality get bigger and bigger, the rich getting far more wealthier with the assets that they own. Do you feel like over the past at least a century we are making progress or good progress, and just in general, where are we in terms of the timeline of how you see the world?
I think there's definitely progress. There's been so much progress. I think when you look in, like, especially in, like, socially, I think in the 1960s you had apartheid going on, and I can't exactly remember when that ended, but it's like, if you think, like, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, you know, a black person couldn't be swimming in the same swimming pool as a white person in certain countries. It's just crazy to look back and think of how recent sort of things were. Like, gay marriage, it was only legalised in the UK in, I think, 2010, sometime around there. So it's like 15 years ago, gay people couldn't get married. It's like, we've had such a major social transformation. I think we sort of lose sight of it because we're still working towards getting better. Like, things have truly transformed, and, like, especially, like, around the world, like in Spain in particular, with women, like, during the dictatorship, it was like the conditions were awful. Like, nowadays, like, following the dictatorship, there was a massive social transformation where just everything changed. I think we've evolved so much. There's still a way to go, but I think...
What's the next big social change, in your opinion?
The next big social change? Oh, God. Oh, my God. You really put me on the spot here. I don't know. I really hope just more lack of discrimination. That's all. I think
discrimination on what basis?
like on any basis, not necessarily in the workplace, just in like socially. I think especially, this is a very Western view, because I think in other places, you know, it's not the same. But I think here it's like, I'd love to be able to walk on the street without the fear that I'm going to be followed by some random guy who I don't know, who's probably like 30-something, 40-something, you know? I'd like for other people my age, other girls my age, other people to just walk on the streets and like without a fear of, you know, they're going to get shouted at, they're going to, you know, have slurs yelled at them, they're going to, you know, that sort of thing. And that's a very Western outlook. I feel like obviously in different parts of the world there needs to be other social transformations, and I think my knowledge of certain parts is a bit outdated, so I can't really vouch for that. But I'd say, I mean, in Dubai in particular, I think more of a social transformation on definitely race. I think there is such a race issue there, where especially a lot of South Asians are very prejudiced against, because they're traditionally viewed as like very working class, which is very stupid. Like the whole society itself is built upon racism over there. Like it's
racial capitalism.
Exactly. And I think it's like, genuinely, when you look for a job there, employers look for if you're Arab or British, and if you're anything else, you're viewed as second class. It's crazy. Like, you wouldn't think that from being in the West, and I guess Dubai's sort of put on a pedestal over here. I mean, when I first moved over there, I had no clue what it was, and then when I came back here, I started telling people about it. They're like, "Oh, I've seen it online. It's so cool, so cool, so cool. Ooh, wow, you know, big buildings and stuff." And like, I get that, but actually living there, the social life there is so baffling. Like for a nation which is really like coming towards the forefront of, like, you know, corporations being located there, that sort of thing, being an international hub, being like the main place for people to like fly through and that sort of thing, being so central, for it to have a society that is built on racism, it's just crazy. I don't know. It's something that needs to change, and I really hope that it happens soon.
Very thought-provoking. A lot to think about, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like thinking about these big questions?
I do like it. I think it sort of motivates me more. It's something that I want to be able to sort of.
Do you ever feel like you, as an individual, sometimes can be overwhelmed by the problems?
I think I can, definitely, and I think I've talked to a lot of people about this. I think I've talked to so many different people about, like, will I actually have an impact and that sort of thing. But it's like, I kind of give myself hope, where it's like, I kind of have to have the viewpoint that I want to have an impact. Because if I don't, then I'm not going to do anything.
Don't, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I think hoping that I'm going to be able to do something with that respect motivates me. And if I actually end up doing something, or if I don't end up doing something, as long as I can influence, like, even one person's life, you know, I'll be happy. I don't know. It's very altruistic. I'm quite an altruistic person, but yeah.
Any thoughts on the effective altruism movement?
I don't know. I haven't really looked into it, I'll be honest with you.
Good.
But I'm not really too sure. I'm just someone who likes to live in like a dream world and have everyone around me happy. So it's not realistic, and I know that, but you know, yeah.
That's awesome. This summer then you've helped out for summer school at Girton.
Yeah.
And interacting with, you know, Chinese students who have also had a very different upbringing to you. What have you learned about China? And
I think I've learned, like, it's actually being able to talk to the students about what their life is like makes me realise how different it is. I think the different values that are instilled in, like, so many different people. I think it's the work life. The work is so prioritised. Like, from the people I've talked to, it's like they don't really have a social life. Their life is their work. Their life is studying. And I don't know if that's just the subsection of people that I talk to in particular, because they are uni students in China. Like, they're obviously going to be working quite hard, but it was generally like the culture of working hard, the culture of, you know, I guess leaving things unsaid. I don't know if that's just because of the people that I was talking to, but I just found that quite interesting, because I think now we are moving towards, in the UK especially, we're moving towards a much more open society where we're discussing so many different things, like to do with mental health, to do with, like, socially, like, you know, like women's rights, gay rights, like rights for all, and that sort of thing. I think just the difference between such an open and closed society is super interesting, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess, like, part of, you know, like, China, Singapore, there are just so many people that, even though we perhaps all want for our children or the youth to have a very balanced life of lots of playtime and nature time.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the nature of the competition is that if you don't then reach each threshold, then you are basically weeded out of the competition.
Yeah.
And when you have so many people, even for employment, it's very hard to be objective. You have to cut people just based on like a standardized test score, which even though it doesn't define someone wholly, you kind of just have to. And I guess that's also tied into like economic development, where we need to have sustainable, inclusive economic growth that enables people to live a life of dignity. And I'm thinking about like Sen's capabilities approach, like the ability to do what one wishes to do. Obviously an ideal that we're all working towards, but it's tricky, it's really difficult. It's
very difficult, especially with China's history as like a manufacturing hub. I think with like the shift that's being made to like different sectors, obviously, as you said, there are such little, like, I guess you could see like high income jobs available to such a massive population of like 1.4 billion people. There's just such a sheer amount of people and such scarcity and like the amount of, as other people would say, I guess, like high earning jobs. Like, it's obvious that is going to have to be ruthless, but I think it's like, it's just sad that it has to be ruthless. I feel like we're very fortunate in the sense that, I mean, I'd say life is still quite ruthless in the sense that, I've still had to grind to get to Cambridge. But I think it's not the same. I think especially in China with the uni entrance exam, the sort of system that puts in place with your entire life being essentially denominated by one grade on, like, I think it's the Gaokao, which is the entrance exam. It's just
the most
crazy.
stressful thing ever.
Exactly. And I think I was watching some documentary about how like genuinely people work for years for it. It's
everything's building up to
exactly.
it for 2 days.
It's similar in Hong Kong as well with the uni system there. It's baffling. I feel very lucky that even though obviously a lot of it, well, my conditional entry was dependent on A levels, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same amount of pressure. Whereas like it was one exam and everyone is ranked. Like, yeah.
So you say like an issue like global warming, where yes, we're different countries. Yes, we, from a nation state perspective, are different. But the consequences of global warming, while it's not evenly distributed, it does ultimately affect everybody. So how do you think that different nations with different histories, different interests, such as, broad distinctions like West and East, America versus China, how could they better collaborate? And maybe your dad would be a better place to ask. But how could they work together and not let other differences and conflicts affect problems like global warming or climate change that ultimately affects the whole of humanity?
I think it's a very interesting question, because obviously global warming is being caused by the industrialized nations. We're the ones who harness the energy and essentially caused all these emissions. But through industrializing, like in particular the UK, has taken resources from other countries without their permission, obviously. So I think it's the sense that the industrialized nations now need to play our part in helping sort of remedy the damage we've caused. I think it's
a question about justice of
exactly. I think
to what extent
it's such
should
a difficult
the West
question.
Be held accountable to their ancestors'
exactly, and
doings.
I think the thing is, the ancestors' doings have had a genuine impact on the quality of life of so many people across, like, anywhere near the equator. It's like, I remember in Dubai, like, temperatures would reach like 50 degrees in the summer every day, and it's like I was lucky that I had AC. But people around, like people in other countries who wouldn't have access to that, their quality of life has worsened so much because of global warming, with droughts, infertile soil, like, things have changed so much, and it's because of our previous influence in the form of burning coal, and that's caused it. I think it's such a difficult question, because it's like, in the UK in particular, we're already struggling with our budget as it is, trying to cater towards the people at home. It's like, to what extent do we prioritise people abroad over the people in the UK suffering from the cost of living crisis? It's just such a difficult question when it comes to, like, actually allocating funds. And I definitely haven't thought of a solution.
So, as a whole, like, you know, like, affirmative action, you know, would be, like, trying to make up for the past wrongdoings. And obviously, I'm thinking, like, there's a lot of debates or controversy, say, on American college admissions, like, to what extent should the criteria objectively be lowered for people who have had structural disadvantage based on race or income or whatever it is? But then the more right-wing thought would be, well, meritocracy, you know, we should all be judged the same. Just, again, an intentionally broad, open question just for you to take it in any direction you want, but what are your thoughts on just the concepts or premises of affirmative action of the current group of people making up for the wrongdoings or the advantages that have been gained from their fathers or grandfathers or the elder generation, which they didn't really themselves cause the harm, but their group as a whole may have benefited from?
I just think with affirmative action, I completely, like, I think in the UK, especially when it comes to, like, the uni process, where it's, like, considering whether you went to a private school, public school, well, private school, state school, and that sort of thing, whether you're international and things, I think it's a great thing. I think when I look at the opportunities that I've had, and that maybe opportunities that, like, my peers had, it sounds like a really stupid basis to, like, kind of see it, but for me it was, like, the maths competitions that I could do. Genuinely, like, I talk to my friends and I sort of talk about the things that I've been able to do with my school. Like, I was able to compete internationally with my school. And, like, my friends at, you know, state schools couldn't do that. Which is why I completely understand the whole process of, you know, if they're not able to have the same opportunities, you know, if we compare us equally, God, I've competed internationally. Like, who's not going to let me in over them? But in reality, as students, like, you know, we could be, like, equal and, you know, they could be better than me. So it's like...
But they haven't had the opportunity.
Exactly. It's the lack of equality of opportunity, which I think, you know, as a society, we haven't found a balance for it yet. And whether we ever find that balance, I don't know. But it's the initiative of doing it.
Equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you comfortable with differing equalities of outcome? Because of different abilities and different...
Yeah, it's different. I think there are so many factors that go into, like, difference in outcome. I think it's ability, but also drive. It's like your actual desire. Like, some people, you know, some people have really great ambitions and other people just want to live comfortably. I think that's why things differ, because people are different. Like, people are going to do different things. People are going to go into different jobs because, you know, some people may be more money driven, some people may be more social life driven, so they'll go for a job which maybe won't be as intense because they don't want to deal with that. And they're fine with making, like, you know, a lower wage than someone doing, well, investment banking, for example, because maybe they prioritise the social life that they have over the wages they may be earning. But I think just in essence, because we are so different, regardless of the opportunities we have, like, even if there is equality of opportunity, people are going to do different things with that equality. And I think the fact that there needs to be equality so that people can make that choice, it's so people can actually choose what they want to go into. I think that's what's important.
Are we rational to choose?
Are we rational? Oh, that is a... As an economist, no one's ever truly rational. But I think if you think about the process of choosing, why you're choosing, I think, for me, the way I view my life is that I want to be happy. And I'm going to choose things that make me happy. So I guess in that sense, I'm rational. Whether it's truly going to benefit me is a different story. I mean, I don't think anyone can ever be perfect with their decisions. I don't think anyone can ever do things perfectly. I think we can all always do things better. And I think for that reason, we won't ever be truly rational. But I don't think there's any point dwelling on that. I think as long as we're all successful in our own ways, I think that's what's important.
That's great. Well, in the context of, again, giving you a legacy-worthy interview, you know, that captures a snapshot of where you are and that you can look back on in decades' time with great meaning, we've obviously touched a fair bit about various aspects of your thoughts and your life. I've got a round of rapid-fire questions and 2 to conclude, but is there anything else that you feel like is deeply important that you want to keep in the recording?
Honestly, I think genuinely just how important my friendships are to me. I think...
Give some shout-outs.
Give some shout-outs, why not? Sophie, if you're listening, this is for you. Love her to bits. I met her this year at uni on the second day. She's actually my college sister. So, and ever since then, we've basically pretty much been inseparable. And I'm actually seeing her later today. So, that'll be fun. But, yeah, and I think just in general to my entire friendship group, I'd like to give an entire shout out to them because they're awesome. They're lovely. But, yeah. And then to my family, to other people, who else? I'll give Charlie a shout out because I feel nice.
How many languages do you speak, actually?
How many languages? I speak two. I mean, English and Spanish. Okay. I can get by in French slightly.
So, why don't you give some words of thanks and you can divvy it up to whoever you want to, and the length is up to you, but can you utilise all the languages that you can speak so that we capture a bit of your language prowess at the moment?
Oh, gosh, okay. Gosh, you put me on the spot. I'll try and think about it. So, well, to my mum, I'll say this in Spanish. It'll be the only one in Spanish, so I'm sorry about that. Bueno, es que estoy muy agradecida por lo que has hecho para mí, por los sacrificios que has hecho para que yo tenga una vida tan increíble y en que yo he podido hacer lo que quisiera, pero también siempre tenerte ahí para mí y tenerte ahí apoyándome a mí, aunque a lo mejor no he hecho las decisiones mejores, que siempre estás ahí apoyándome. Yeah. My Spanish isn't the best, but I'm working on it. I think in general, just to everyone out there, I think, well, my dad, my sister, my mum obviously have the top place in my heart is my family. For everything they've done for me, for dealing with me, for just always supporting me regardless of whether I might be in the right, whether I might be in the wrong. I think also to Sophie for being absolutely amazing, for being generally one of the funniest people I know. We always have really good laughs. I think for Charlie being pretty awesome. Yeah. Just to everyone. I just love everyone, basically. Nothing in particular, yeah.
That's great. Rapid fire questions then. Who do you text the most at the moment?
Who do I text most at the moment? Oh God. I'd say it's quite a mix of people. So I text my best friend Sophie a lot, text my boyfriend a lot, text my parents a lot. But I'm always with them nowadays, so obviously I don't have to text them. I just go down and shout their name and they're there. Yeah.
Favourite movie genre?
Oh, I'm such a sucker for a rom-com. I love a good rom-com. Especially Notting Hill, it's my favourite rom-com. But also just all-time favourite movie is The Princess Bride. It's such a bad film, but it's just amazing.
Is there anything that you collect?
Anything I collect? Oh, I don't really... I used to collect key rings a lot. I used to collect them from anywhere I'd gone. I don't really do it so much anymore. I don't collect things, I make things more, I'd say. Yeah.
What are some nicknames you've got?
Oh, I've had quite a few. My sister likes to call me Emu a lot because it really annoys me. I've been called M quite a bit as well. I like that name actually. I like being called M as well. I've been called Emar by my DT teacher in Year 9. I didn't like that nickname at all, but
the dumbest dare you'd ever agreed to?
The dumbest dare I ever agreed to? Oh God. I've never really done any silly things. I don't know, I'm trying to think about it. I wish I had done. I wish I had been a bit more silly. Yeah. I don't know, probably just messaging someone, texting someone something. That's probably... I can't really remember it, but I've definitely done that in the past and definitely regretted it. So,
what's your favourite board game?
Probably Monopoly.
Finish the sentence. The way to my heart is...
Coffee.
You're on the right show.
Yeah. Also just food in general.
Best thing to do on a first date?
On a first, what, sorry? First date. Just anything where I can actually talk to the person, so a picnic would be awesome. Love a good picnic.
Would you ever skydive?
No. I'm so afraid of skydiving.
What's your go-to like karaoke song?
Oh God. Any Lana Del Rey song, anything I can belt my heart out to, basically.
If someone had full access to your Google search, how would they describe you in a few words?
Someone who likes to travel, because it's basically just anywhere I can go on holiday.
Is there any like non-existent job that you wish existed?
Oh gosh, I really wish I could just go around the world and just get paid for it. I just want to travel and get paid.
Second to last question then. You as someone who has lived around the world across different cultures, achieved a lot, obviously quite intellectually curious. Do you feel like capital T truth, like an objectivity, some people find it in religion, like a god, other people might find it in, their deeply held experiences that they've had and the corresponding beliefs in it. Do you think capital T truth exists? And if so, even if you haven't yet discovered or can describe it, what is the closest thing or aspect or ideology or whatever it is that you think best that comes to mind when you think of capital T truth?
I think with people being religious and people kind of having faith in a higher power, I'm sort of someone who's always been atheist. I'm quite a pessimistic person, but I think in that sense I sort of have my hope in my family. I don't tell them this enough, so if they are listening, then yeah, this is for you. But it's just knowing that regardless of what I do, I can always fall back on them. And they're always there for me. And I know that if they ever need anyone to fall back on, that I'll be there for them. I think it's just having that hope that I'll always have them around. That sort of gets me.
Why are you an atheist?
I don't know. I feel like ever since I was little, I was like, there's nothing up there. Because I think it kind of all happened when, I think being like, God is omnipotent, and then seeing children get cancer, children having all these horrible experiences. And I think this lack of equality
is the problem of evil.
Yeah, basically. And I think it's just, if we truly did live with a God, people wouldn't be going through this. And, I'm very fortunate. I just feel like if we had a God, everyone would be as fortunate, kind of thing.
Sounds like heaven.
Exactly. No, the thing is, I respect people's beliefs completely, because I understand that people get hope from different things. But for me, it's just if someone was truly omnipotent, then if I was omnipotent, for example, I wouldn't want anyone to be suffering. I don't know if that's just a me point of view, but that's kind of the way I view it.
I guess final question then, with all the backdrop and the context of all the places you've been, being born in Spain, Nigeria, going back to Spain where your sister was born, to Nigeria again, India for those 3 years and 4 to 7, UK for 6 or 7 years, and then UAE for another 5 years, and then coming back to the UK, which it's really, really cool what you have been able to see and to experience, moving countries 7 times, moving houses 11th time, being that transient, having met very different people, or also having parents who are incredibly supportive of personal growth and knowing your worth. Dad being posted, being a diplomat, serving in that capacity, and mum recently finishing her psychology degree as well, so I get the sense that she's always learning and developing, and that's probably the sense of culture within the family with you and Hannah, right, your sister?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You guys having that really tight relationship of occasional deep conversations, but lots of playfulness and lots of supporting and mutually kind of learning from each other, for all the things that you have been through, the bullying, the low self-esteem, trying to fit in and people please, and not always having the confidence to have your own opinion, or at least to vocalize it and to stand out and be unique, to face all those bullying, but then later on realizing that perhaps a lot of those kids bully because that's the only time when they can feel that sense of power and control that they lack in their own life, and it's not always completely their fault, and you can now more fully appreciate the plight that they go through with problems such as an unstable home life, etc. But yet nevertheless, we can still be hurt, and it's still a concrete reality. For you to kind of find almost an academic validation through the math competitions, and thinking that you might want to study and pursue math at a high level at a university like Cambridge, but also I guess going through that personal growth of seeing a therapist and getting those strategies of realizing that there are lots of things that are good about you, and while as imperfect and as flawed as we all are, if we consciously try and focus on the things that we are good at and that we love about ourselves, then we can really boost our self-esteem and confidence, and recognize that we all have good sides, and that if we're in the right community, in the right social environment, that we can all flourish and support one another, which is the ideal state of where we all want to be in. And in that process, for you to realize the importance of like friendships and family and finding social connection, having the undiagnosed ASD, but having it diagnosed, but realizing that alone doesn't define you, is an aspect that you it's just a part of you, and it's nothing you need to be ashamed of, nothing you need to hide from. It just is, and it's just it's quite inspiring, kind of the attitude with which you now take after having gone through so much, thinking about all the big questions about economics, politics, having left-wing views, thinking about the role of governments and where your personal strength might lie for economic development and equality, coming to an environment like Cambridge where you're exposed to people from very different backgrounds, very passionate about what they're interested in, for you to make the effort to always reach out to people and say that, oh, so lovely to see you, I'd love to see you again, and trying to maintain those social connection. With all of those things in mind, how would you recommend others to better encourage and inspire or get to know you? Like what are there any questions that you wish other people would ask you more, or are there other things that we often have, as you said, unconscious bias, like we sometimes don't know what we don't know. Just from your interactions, how do you think others around you, they're fascinated by Emma, and they may have heard the podcast or whatever it is, and they see the different cool things you get up to, and they find you as bubbly and warm and just a really cool person, and they're feeling a bit shy perhaps, or a bit intimidated or overwhelmed. What's the best way to get to know Emma and to start a dialogue and conversation and perhaps a lifelong friendship?
Genuinely, I think I'm one of the kinds of people that you can just say anything to. I'm really happy just talking about anything. And while I might not like small talk as much, I always love a deep conversation. If you bring up anything like thought-provoking that you're interested in, like I'd love to kind of get into that and that sort of thing. I think there isn't anything in particular that needs to be asked. I think just any effort to like talk to me, I really appreciate, because I know how hard it is to like reach out to people who I just haven't talked to really. Genuinely, just any form of effort counts, I think. Yeah.
Great. And just a quick one, I guess, a typical final one, but a brief one. Like, what's one message, quote, or saying you wish every educated teacher would promote and every child would internalize? So if you could summarize all of that in a succinct way of your current life philosophy, what would that be?
Oh gosh, I think it's something that I need to listen to more. I think it's know your own value. I think it's know what you bring to the table, knowing yourself, knowing what you want, knowing what you like, what you dislike, what you deserve in life, what you want from life, what you want to do in the future. Just knowing more about yourself and putting yourself at as your number one priority, and going to life with that view, I think really promotes people to like succeed in life, regardless of how success like is defined in different people's lives. I think when you go into life with the idea that you're at the forefront of your own life, because you are your own main character, like you're living your life, you've got to put yourself as the main character of your own story. You're not a side character. Like, as soon as you can go into life with that viewpoint, you become much happier because you put yourself as a priority. You don't prioritize other people's feelings.
I hope you've enjoyed the ice latte and the experience.
Yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you so much for having me, seriously.
I really enjoyed it, and I think just your honesty combined with your bubbliness and just, it's just really inspiring to hear you reflect upon the peaks and troughs and of the cycle of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
But overall, it is trending upwards, just like the business cycle.
Yeah.
And I think it's the way that you are able to so appreciate other people, from your parents, your sister, to your friends across different places, and the constant reflection you have about, the human conditions that we all face, and just how we can all support one another in a community setting and to make a difference. I think those are the things that I will be rethinking about over the weekend, and I very much appreciate it. And it's lovely to meet you in person. I wish you nothing but the very best for the future.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.